Hello, hello, and welcome to the After Hours Gaming League Week 4 recap, brought to you by Day 9 TV and Red Bull Gaming. As we take a look at the global league standings, we see that these teams have only one more week left to land that spot in the top 3 of each of their divisions. Whoever gets into top 3 does advance to the championship bracket. Whoever gets bottom 3 is eliminated from that chance to win $5,000 to the charity of their choosing. In Division 1, we see that Epic continues its tear with an undefeated 4-0 record. Zynga, the second place team from last season's AHGL, hot on their heels with that 3-1 record. The real question is, between Palantir and Pipeworks, who will be able to advance to the next round? Right now, Palantir just ahead by a single tiebreaker point. In Division number 2, IBM, Amazon, and Twitter all virtually guaranteed spots in that top 3. Ernst & Young, AMD, and Zappos are going to have to pray for a miracle wild card to get them into that top 16. Division number 3 has a lot of drama coming up in week number 5. EA and Microsoft guaranteed to advance in spots 1 and 2, but RapidShare, Qualcomm, FactSet, and Dropbox all have a shot at making into that 3rd place slot. Each one of them is going to have to hope for some big 3-0 wins to advance to the playoffs. The story in Division 4, very similar to Division 1. Spots 1 and 2 virtually guaranteed to be Facebook and Google. It's all going to come down to Geek Squad versus Nvidia. Who will be able to win their match convincingly and advance? In Division 5, with 29 teams in the league, one of the divisions had to be left with 5 teams in it. And because we have irony, it will be Division 5, where Intel, Twitch TV, and Adobe are comfortably positioned to advance on for that shot to get $5,000 to the charity of their choosing. With the look at the league said and done, it's time to look at some Week 4 highlights, beginning with Dropbox versus FactSet. The series was tied 2-2 going into game number 5 after a dramatic 30-minute long Game 4 on Entombed Valley. Amo from Team FactSet spawned at the south position and opened up with an extremely fast Banshee play. Talon, on the other hand, looked to be setting himself up to somewhat of an all-in, going for ultra-fast Blink Stalker and Observers off one base. After narrowly avoiding losing any probes to that initial Banshee and even getting off a beautiful snipe on another Banshee in the center of the map, once Talon popped into the main base of Amo didn't have nearly enough infrastructure to withstand a full control group of stalkers. Talon closes out the series 3-2, giving Dropbox their very first victory in the league play. Amazon versus Ernst & Young also went to a dramatic game number 5 with Metzel Mats, the Zerg player from Amazon, up against Amino Fizvi from Ernst & Young. Seriously guys, get harder to pronounce names please. Both players opened up fairly standardly, with the first bit of aggression going down when a whole slew of Zealot Voidray swept into Metzel Mats' front, which he promptly defended with Queens, Zerglings, and a handful of Mutas, revealing his plans for the mid-game. Metzel Mats battered down the 3rd base of the Ernst & Young toss again and again and again and again, with countless numbers of Mutalisks reinforced by Zerglings. It seemed like no matter how many Stalkers the Protoss produced, the Zerg just had a little bit too many flyers. Right when it looked like the Ernst & Young Protoss was starting to stabilize, the Amazani Zergi swept in with huge numbers of Roaches, followed up by a Roachling finishing move that left Amina Fizvi with only a GG. Amazon took the win 3-2. In the casted match of Geek Squad versus Facebook, Facebook managed to take the victory 3-1. All started on the right foot by that Game 1 from Winkeltoss, where he comfortably defended a very early 7 Roach Rush and countered with a little 7 Warp Gate action of his own. And now it's time for the highlight series of the week. It's LinkedIn versus Digital Extremes. Though both the teams had 0 league wins on their belts, they wound up in a hell of a bout for week number 4. The series began with Fate from Digital Extremes in the bottom left versus Byron from LinkedIn in the bottom right on Shakura's Plateau. The game stayed quiet till Fate erupted into action with a series of stunning drops, even managing to take down the main of the poor LinkedIn Zerg. Soon enough, though, Byron managed to snap back with a little bit of Infestor and Mutalisk play, but once Fate gathered all his troops together and began marching down the center lane, there was little Byron could do to handle the overwhelming Marine numbers of the Digital Extreme Terran. Digital Extreme up 1-0. Game number 2 begins with the green Digital Extreme Zerg Karma in the right versus Long Cat, the LinkedIn Zerg on the left of Shattered Temple. Both players opened very similarly, except we got to see the Digital Extreme Zerg sneaking out a few extra drones in the early game. Though both players went one base Roach, those few extra drones helped give the Digital Extreme Zerg an overwhelming Roach count very early in the game. Digital Extremes now leads the series 2-0. In game number 3, it was all up to Var from LinkedIn, spawning in the top right as the blue Terran. His team down 0-2. He was up against Solstice in the top left from Digital Extremes in the green. Var early expands and tries to put on a little bit of Marine pressure that doesn't fare too well against the Sentry Immortal force of Solstice, but it's that very force that makes a big misstep a few minutes later. A large force of Immortal Sentries and basic gateway units tries to bust the front door of Var, but with a very solid line of bunkers, medevacs, and all those infantry units, the army of Solstice melts. Var manages to do a swift counterattack, helping his team avoid elimination. LinkedIn 1-2 versus Digital Extremes. In game number 4, LinkedIn was not out of the woods yet. Kodak from LinkedIn versus Cash from Digital Extremes began on Entombed Valley. Kodak opened very safely, very calmly, with an early expand and did hardly any aggression until he had medevacs. With that first engagement, Cash looked like he was about to lose with his Stalker Immortal force, but comfortably pulled back to some reinforcements. The rest of the game, though there was little interaction between the players, Kodak managed to secure his third expansion much earlier. When that final engagement began, it was a near maxed army from Kodak versus a 120 food army from Cash. Kodak rolls over his opponent, tying the series up 2-2. The final game began on Antigua Shipyard with Var being sent out from Team LinkedIn and Karma from Digital Extremes as the Zerg in the bottom right. It looked like the Terran player wanted to open up a little bit bomber style with a very fast third orbital command, but right when it looked like Var was getting ready to go into high macro mode, some very fast Mutalisks from Karma swept in the backside, and suddenly Var was scrambling to stay afloat. For the next several minutes, Mutalisks hitting at every possible angle meant Var hardly had any time to do any aggression, barely able to stabilize his third expansion. When Var finally did move out, an enormous force of Ling Yuta Baneling Infestor crushed everything, and Var looked inches away from losing, but with just enough units, he managed to stay alive, stabilize, and began the slow, steady process of pushing out his front door, dealing with huge numbers of Ultralisk Zergling Baneling, and trying to establish control of that center. Though there was no single moment that gave Var the victory, the slow, steady poking and prodding, dismantling the top right expansion, securing the center gold, and eventually dropping the Zerg's third were more than enough to give Var the winning position he needed to make that final push towards the heart of the Zerg base, allowing Team LinkedIn to win the series 3-2 versus Digital Extremes, finally putting a victory for them in league play. And with the highlight series of the week said and done, it is time for the Cheese of the Week. The winner is Odie from Team Shopify in his Game 2 against OREMJ from Team Mozilla. Everything looked fairly standard and square, with OREMJ performing the most beautifully coordinated defensive early expand build of all time. Odie, on the other hand, had absolutely no qualms in the slightest about doing a straight Dark Templar rush. Despite being at around half his opponent's food when those Dark Templar finally warped in, the DTs managed to completely destroy all the grandeur OREMJ had built for himself. Odie manages to secure over 50 kills combined with those DTs, with one of the Dark Templar even managing to snatch up 30 kills of his own. Odie has no shame in winning, with a couple of cloaked units early on. Congrats to Odie for winning the Cheese of the Week For all your news related to the After Hours Gaming League, go to AHGL.tv, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Facebook, and get pumped, ladies and gents, because next week is the final round of league play. Whoever gets into the top 3 of their respective divisions advances on to the playoff pools. Whoever is not in top 3 gets relegated down to the kiddie pools for only a mere consolation prize. My name's Day9. Thanks to Red Bull for supporting the After Hours Gaming League. I am over and out.